大家好，就欢迎个大家人见面。Jason, thank you very much, you and Jeannie, for hosting this year's Taiwanese American Conference. I'm sorry I can't be up there with you today. Today actually is election day in New York State. It's a Democratic primary for governor, for lieutenant governor, for state assembly, and also for judges. And so we are all out here campaigning for this person, Karen Lin, who will be the first Taiwanese American elected to judge here in New York. She's going to be a great person. In fact, I'm here with her two boys out there talking to voters. But I did want to take a moment to say hello to everybody at the Taiwanese American Conference. This is a conference that I'm very familiar with ever since I was a kid, a young child. I've been going to this Halinhui. And then when I became a teenager, I was a youth organizer when we had it the first time at Cornell University. And then, of course, every year, Halinhui goes to a different campus. This year looks very exciting. I'm sorry I can't be there, but the Taiwanese American community continues to be very proud. I am very proud to be made in Taiwan myself. And so we have a lot of voices that need to be heard internationally. But I also remind people that we need to be heard here locally in the United States, in New York, or whatever state you come from, because this is where our lives are. This is where we pay taxes. This is where our kids and grandkids are growing up. And so TAC is very politically aware on global issues and also has to be aware on local issues. And so with that, I don't know, Jason, I don't know if there's anything you want me to specifically talk about. I don't know if these fine people actually want to know much about biking to Albany, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I know you have other speakers as well.
Let's give applause to John Liu first. 恁大家上有问题无？今日咱开放3个问题。今日 ，Johnny, do you want to speak like any new progress like between Taiwan and the American government? Like any new update?
I'm a humble member of the New York State Senate, so we don't. We have enough issues to deal with between trying to control the flow of guns into the state, where unfortunately we have had mass killings, especially recently in Buffalo. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court just a couple of weeks ago struck down a New York law that makes it much more difficult for people to carry guns now that law is out. So actually on Thursday, I'll be heading up to Albany with my colleagues to fix that law so that the Supreme Court cannot strike it down again. But internationally, we have a very strong presence from TECO. I know our TECO director is part of this today as well. He's been to Albany. We maintain very close contact. And in fact, we had a great reception of over 24 legislators in Albany when Director Lee came up to Albany to say hello and to meet the lawmakers in the state capitol. We try to keep people aware of the great democracy that Taiwan is and the innovations, everything from social innovation to technological innovation. It's something that we Taiwanese are very, very proud of, and we take every opportunity we can to talk about it. And so these are the issues that, again, lots of issues locally, statewide, national, and international. And I'm always happy to be right in the middle of these discussions.
Any question?
我想要知影吼，讲 New York State 吼，即马迄个 criminal 吼 release back to the street too soon, and it's becoming a safety problem for all New Yorkers. And is the Senate doing anything?
Johnny, you move. Hold on, Johnny, hold on. This is some issue on audio.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I think the person who asked the question is asking a great question. The question is about, well, I think the question is about public safety and crime. And unfortunately, public safety has been going down. Crime has been going up in New York, as well as pretty much the whole country, unfortunately. And there are a lot of causes for that increase in crime. But in New York State, it seems like everybody talks about bail reform as the reason behind the increase in crime. I will say to you, quite honestly, that bail reform that was passed in 2019 is something that I voted for, along with pretty much every other Democratic lawmaker, and signed by Governor Cuomo at the time. The question that this young lady posed is, we talked about we cannot let criminals back out on the street. And I agree with that. But I also encourage people to think about that statement and how bail reform affects that statement. Because bail reform never let any criminals out on the street. Bail reform never affected how when somebody gets arrested, they have to stand trial for their accused crime. Bail reform never affected the sentence that somebody found guilty of a crime has to serve. Bail reform only reformed bail. And what is bail? Bail is not a punishment. Bail is not a sentence. Bail is simply a money deposit that when somebody is arrested for a nonviolent crime, they used to have to pay a deposit called bail just to make sure that they show up to court. When they show up to court for their trial, they get their bail money back because it's not a fine, it's not a punishment. But for many years, there were poor families whose kids or sometimes the young men would be accused of crimes, and they wouldn't have enough money to post for bail. So they would have to wait for their court. They would have to wait for their trial in jail on Rikers Island in New York City. And when that happens, they get kicked out of school, they lose whatever job they have, and they become criminals for life. We're trying to prevent that. We're trying to allow people to continue their lives while they wait for their trial. And before bail reform, anybody who was accused of a crime could go home and wait for their trial at home if they had enough money to post bail, to pay that money deposit. The poorer families who could not post that bail, their kids, if they got arrested, meaning they were accused, not convicted, accused of a crime, they would have to wait for their trial on Rikers Island in jail. What is the average bail? Average bail is not $1 million or $50,000. It's $5,000. If anybody in the room, and certainly myself included, if we or our kids were accused of a nonviolent crime, we'd have enough money to post bail, and our kids or ourselves could wait for the trial at home, continue with school, continue with work. But if people didn't have enough money to post for bail, then they continued on this downward cycle that would eventually make them criminals for life. That is what we try to prevent. So when you say keep criminals off the street, I totally agree with that. Absolutely, 100%. But I hope people think about what bail actually is, and that bail reform never affected any sentence that somebody found guilty of a crime would have to pay, would have to serve. And it didn't affect any of the trial that would have to happen if somebody was arrested for a crime. I will note one thing, that there is actually a difference in the system that we have here in the United States with this presumption of innocence until proven guilt versus the same presumption of innocence until proven guilt that I believe we have in Taiwan. In Taiwan, my understanding is that the standard for being arrested is much higher than the standard for being arrested here in the United States. And so you have the conviction rates in Taiwan of people arrested much, much higher. In the United States, and certainly in New York, the percentage of people who are arrested and then ultimately convicted is much lower. In other words, arrest is not the same as conviction. So people might say this is soft on crime. I don't think it's soft on crime at all. I think this actually makes us all safer in the long run. In the long run, when we don't push these young men down into a life of crime by taking away the opportunity to stay in school and stay at their jobs while they are waiting for their trial, as opposed to more wealthy families who could always post the bail, pay that money deposit so that they can wait for their trial at home. That is the only difference. That is what bail is, and that's what bail reform did.
All right, John, I have a question on how did you get to Albany this time? Did you go on a bike? And how long is this distance, and how long does it take you?
Okay, so I have bicycled to Albany from Flushing, which is where I live. It takes, it's not so bad actually. It takes 16 hours, and the reason it takes 16 hours is because you can't really leave before it gets light. So it gets light at around 5 a.m. and you have to get to Albany by 9 p.m. because if you don't get to Albany by 9 p.m., it gets dark. And let me tell you something. In Albany, there are street lights in the city of Albany, which is only about half a mile long. But for 30 miles before Albany, it is completely pitch black, no lights whatsoever. And, you know, you have some animals out there. You have the occasional car. It's not a pleasant situation to be in. So you got to get to Albany by 9 o'clock. So the answer is 16 hours, and that includes time to have breakfast, have lunch, and have dinner. And when I'm not biking, I can drive. Drive takes about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And Jason, you know, I'm a pilot, so sometimes I do fly the plane up there. That takes 45 minutes.
Yeah, we all envy you. Okay, we only can drive car, and then you take the airport, and you like the drive an airplane. You know?
Yes.
And then, so right now, we have a last question. There's a gentleman that want to ask you the last question.
Yes.
Oh, I want to ask you a question. I work in the New York City in the school, right? So before all the kids, they got good, they study harder, right? The Asian kids, like the one from Taiwan or whatever. And then they pass the test and they go to good school. But right now, look like last time they want to take off the test, and they want to right now thank God we keep the test, but so they still use the grade to go to good school. But right now they start to use the lotto and use other things for other kids can go in also. But it's like we are good in grade, right? We are studying very hard. But right now it's not very fair to use the lotto or to just to make other kids can go in. What is your opinion? Because you don't look like you know better.
John, you hold on. It's kind of like you are on mute.
No, I know what the problem is. The problem is you guys keep muting me, not me. You guys did that.
Okay, Kenny,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you right now.
Okay, all right. I didn't touch anything. I understand you guys. All right, look, I agree with the gentleman who asked the question. I think grades matter and tests matter. And look, we come from a test-taking culture. Nothing wrong with that. My dad, growing up in Taiwan, had to take a test every step of his life, from grade school to junior high school to college to the army to getting a job in a company. I mean, everything is about tests. And so I, have been a very strong supporter of keeping the specialized high school test. And also, I don't agree with what the Department of Education in New York City and Mayor Adams has been doing with the high school admissions. There used to be selective admissions criteria based on grades as well as statewide test scores and other factors. But now it's largely gone to a lottery system. And I hope that the lottery system will only extend for one more year, primarily because of COVID reasons. Some of the statewide tests were not administered, so those grades were not available. But I am pushing for next year, meaning school year 2023 to 24, to return back to the same system that we had pre-2000 and pre-COVID, meaning these screening criteria that are merit-based, so that the kids who actually worked hard can get into the best schools.
Okay, let's give John Liu applause. Thanks for him joining us tonight. And then we are so proud of John to let someone speak for us in the New York State government. So let's give a warm
All right. That's
applause to John again. And then,
have a great conference, everybody.
Okay, John, have a good night, and then wish you have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. And then don't forget, keep riding bike, okay?
And Karen Lin for civil court judge, our first Taiwanese American judge in New York.
Yeah, you're right, Okay. Okay, let's say
night.
bye to John. Okay, bye, John.
Bye.